Hi friends, I'm Steph Góngora, or as some of you know me, Casa Colibri on social media. Welcome to my first day of Yoga Flow. So this is a fairly short flow where we'll be focusing on some of the basic yoga movements and postures. It's not to say that it's going to be easy because there's a lot to learn when you start yoga. However, it shouldn't be presented in an overwhelming format. And so as we move through today's class, slowly, with intention, with attention to the breath and our movements, I don't want you to get hung up on anything that you can't do. Instead, just focus on being grateful for this time on the mat, that you have a body that can move on the mat, and that you're starting this journey because it can be a very rewarding journey of many different lengths and intensities for different people. So, not everybody's yoga has to look like crazy handstands and folding in half and back bends. So keep that in mind. This is movement as a form of meditation. We'll be going slowly and paying attention to details. As always, there will be scheduled rests, but you can take more rests whenever you need to. I do recommend you have at least one block and a blanket, maybe if you have sensitive knees. If you don't have a block, then some sturdy books or a nice strong box can work well. And of course, if you don't have a blanket, then a towel is just fine. We're gonna start out lying on our backs. And we're gonna start with our feet as wide as the mat and our knees falling towards the midline. And that's just gonna help us as we lay on back down and relax. It's going to help us preserve the natural curve of our low back. It's in slight extension or slight arch, so that's okay. We just want to support it with this knees in, feet wide posture. You could take your hands to your belly for now and just try to relax into the mat. You can hear the sound of the rain behind me in the jungle. Just tune into that. Oftentimes, teachers will invite you to close your eyes at the beginning of class to settle into this space. You're welcome to do so now. However, if it feels more comfortable to keep the eyes open, just keep a soft gaze, not really focusing on anything in particular, just trying to almost blur your vision, zone out just slightly. First, just bringing attention to the breath. Not changing it, just watching it. Maybe you can feel the rise and fall of your belly. Maybe you feel it more in your chest. Neither is right or wrong. Just observing it as we try to relax, thinking about melting, so smoothing out the space between our eyebrows, trying to relax our shoulders. And now maybe starting to deepen the breath slowly. You can do this through Ujjayi breathing, which is Oceanic Breath. And so the best way to cultivate that is to think about fogging up a mirror. So if you take one hand in front of your mouth and pretend you were fogging that mirror, you make a slight noise that's been compared to the rush of water or listening to the sound inside of a seashell. And you can make that same motion as you inhale as well. All you're doing is you're slightly constricting the throat. And so if that feels comfortable, what you can do is try to close the mouth and continue that slight constriction for Ujjayi breathing. It's just a way to warm the breath, to slow the breath down. Maybe that rain, which is getting a little bit stronger now on my metal roof, is helping to do that. Or maybe it's distracting, in which case I'm sorry. Continuing to not make the inhales and exhales too long, just slightly elongate them, make them nice and even. And we'll return to our breath a few times during today's class. Of course, the idea is always to keep a nice relaxed breath to move with ease throughout the asana practice. So if ever there's a time when you feel like your breathing is ragged or you can't breathe at all, that's a good sign that it is time to rest and relax. Keeping your hands on your belly, heel toe your feet towards the midline. Now using the strength of your low belly, see if you can pull your knees slightly towards your chest, just enough so that your feet come off the ground. Flex your feet, so pull your toes towards your shin bones. Squeeze your knees gently together. See if you can bring your shins up to parallel with the ground, so you're forming a 90-degree angle with your legs. Keep your right hand on your belly. Take your left hand to your thigh. Now, spreading your left hand between both your thighs, I want you to push your hand into your thighs and your thighs into your hand, but only with about 10 to 15% pressure or power. So you're not shoving, you're just gently pressing. And because you're pressing evenly with the hand and with the thighs, you're not actually going anywhere. It's an isometric movement. That being said, maybe you felt something happen beneath your right hand. So release that pressure for just a second and then bring it back. Do you gently feel the toning of the core? Not a crunch like we're doing a sit-up. It's almost like a vacuuming or a core setting as the core turns on and pulls all your organs towards the midline to stabilize. That's the kind of movement and core integration that we're looking to get as we move through the practice. Now, if this gets tiring in the hip flexors and the core, you can slowly lower the feet. And you can even practice this motion with the toes on the ground or on blocks. So if that's just too much on the hip flexors, don't feel like you have to do it there. It's also just a great core toning drill. So you can even bring both hands to the thighs and push there, pushing the thighs away and up. Remembering to breathe through this motion. It might feel a little bit more difficult now as we bring the core into play. Suddenly it becomes harder to cultivate that belly breathing of the belly moving in and up when we've got that inner ab muscle turned on. Carefully release your feet back towards the earth. Knees stay bent up towards the sky. Keep the left foot planted. Pull the right knee in towards the body. Take your hands, and if they reach, wrap them around the knee, hugging the knee in towards the right armpit. Now, if the hands cannot comfortably reach the knee, you can take a strap around the right shin and help pull it in. Just finding some gentle compression. See if you can relax the shoulders, relax the back of the head. Your right foot can be flexed or loose. No need for a lot of activation here. Slowly release the right foot back to the mat. Bring the left knee in. Take your hands, maybe the opposite clasp, so opposite finger on top, and pull your left knee just right outside of your left side body, so right by the left ribs, up towards the left armpit. And again, you can use a strap, trying to relax your shoulders, remembering to breathe. Slowly release, both feet on the ground. Walk them back out to about hip distance. You can keep your hands on your belly here or take them out to a cactus or like football field goals. You can even take them out to a T if that's more comfortable. All we're going to do is gently drop the knees to the right, and they may not reach the floor, that's fine. Pick them back up, drop the knees to the left, pick them back up, go to the right. So just moving back and forth, left. Next inhale brings them up. Exhale, drop to the right. Inhale, up. Exhale to the left, so bringing the breath in. Inhale, up. Exhale, right. One more time. Inhale, up. Exhale, left. Inhale, up. Using the strength of your low belly, pull one knee and then the other knee in towards your chest. Take your hands to your shins and see if you can create some motion. We're just going to start rocking along the spine. We're eventually going to rock all the way up to seat. So just finding some lubrication along the spine, some gentle massage along the spine. If you need to help push yourself up to a comfortable seat, that's perfectly fine. And as we come into a comfortable seat at the top of the mat, here's where the block can come in handy. So, a few choices. We really want to focus on sitting up nice and tall and strong. If that's not an option with your sit bones on the ground, you can take them onto one or even 2 blocks to help you find a little bit of lift there. If this is still not comfortable, you can sit with your back against a wall. You can change it up to Drisana, which is knees together, feet together. And then if that's not comfortable to sit on, widening the feet out so that you can place 1, 2, even 3 blocks underneath your sit bones. So you're trying not to have any knee pain here. And you're trying to sit up nice and straight and strong. So length from the crown of the head, which is stacked over the shoulders, which is stacked over the hips. Whew. Okay, from here we're just going to take some gentle wrist love. So rolling the wrists. Opposite direction, same direction, doesn't matter. We haven't put a lot of weight on them yet, so it's okay to give them a gentle shake if that feels good. Nice, straight and strong. Find that gentle engagement of the core that we had when we were doing the leg pressing. So if you should touch your belly, it should feel firm all the way around. And then taking some shoulder shrugs. So whether that's circles or slow shrugs, just waking up the shoulder joint. Reversing the motion, coming forward maybe. Shaking out the arms a little bit. Nobody said all of yoga had to be rigid and structured, so just getting the blood flow going. All right, and then let's start to wake up the spine with some gentle cat-cow. And a lot of times we see cat-cow in more of a tabletop position. However, it can be really beneficial to start it from this seating position. So if you are in that Drisana seat with your knees and ankles together, you can still do it. Just take your hands to your knees closer together or to the outside edges of your knees. If you're with me in Sukhasana or easy sit, take your hands to your knees. Take a deep inhale, think length up through the crown of the head. And as you exhale, think about grounding your sit bones down into your block or the mat. Now your next inhale, whether you're grabbing your knees or your thighs, you get to pull your hands back towards your hips. Pull your sternum, or this hard plate between your ribs, pull it forward. Keep the engagement of the core. Pull the sternum forward. Push the back of the skull back gently, almost like you're trying to give yourself a slight double chin. This is cow pose. Pull the shoulder blades together and down the back, so you're thinking broad across the collarbones. Next exhale. Push the hands down and away from you. Tuck the chin. Puff up through the back of the heart. So where you feel your shoulder blades separate, you want to think about puffing that out behind you. Push the hands away from you. Suck your navel in towards your belly. This is cat pose. Next inhale pulls you back forward. Lead with the sternum. Shoulders come away and towards the midline. Push the back of the skull back. Exhale, cat. Puff up through the back of the heart. Tuck the chin. Keep breathing. Next inhale pulls you forward. Lead with the sternum. These will get a little bit deeper every time you do them. Exhale, reverse. Keep moving with your own breath. You can bring in some circle motions if that feels comfortable. Side stretch, getting into the outer hip. If you are going one way, then make sure you go the other. Or you can stick to those simple back and forth motions. Returning to your breathing. Focusing on the steady sound of the rain in the background. It's telling you to relax. It's going to be okay. Even if you can't pull those shoulders away as much as you'd like to, it's going to be okay. You're still doing the work. You're still putting the effort in. Slowly return back to a neutral spine. Again, touch your belly. Is it nice and firm? If not, think about lifting up through the crown of the head. Up, up, up. As if something were corseting you in here. You're using the strength of your ab muscles to essentially give yourself a corset. Let's remove the block from underneath our sit bones. Ooh. Off to the side. We're going to be coming into tabletop position. Now, in tabletop, what does that mean? Shoulders over wrists, hips over knees. Knees are hip distance apart, hands are shoulder distance apart. core is engaged, so we want to think a nice straight line from the crown of the head out back through the sit bones. It does not mean dumping the belly down low, and it doesn't mean puffing up the back of the heart into more of a cat pose. It means a nice straight line with the knees down. If your knees are sensitive, you can put them on a blanket. You want to keep the legs active, so here my legs are loose, right? I want to think about rocking to the inner edges of the knees, almost like I'm squeezing a block in between my thighs. And if you'd like to give yourself a little challenge, you can squeeze a block between your thighs while you do this. Now let's move our attention to the arms. So often we see ourselves locking out here, whether it's in tabletop or plank or downward facing dog. And what I mean by locking out is just straightening the arms as much as we can and facing the eyes of the elbows forward, which is actually just stacking bone on bone, and we're not using our muscles. It's also just not as safe on our shoulder girdle. So we want to think about keeping a micro bend here. We can do that by winging the elbows wide and then wrapping them towards the back of the mat, keeping a micro bend in the arms here. Push down firmly through all four corners of the hands, especially the inside edges of the hands, which tend to grow a little bit light here. Keep that micro bend, nice firm push through all four corners of the hands. Keep the core engaged. Reach long through the crown of the head to pull the shoulders away from the ears. Beautiful. Now, using the power of the low belly, seeing if you can keep the pelvis exactly how it is. Dig your fingertips into the mat for strength and back your right toes up behind you to straighten your right leg. See if you can do that a few times without moving your pelvis. So we're not finding this movement and taking it into a back bend. It's a very small movement of the low belly turning on and seeing if we can tap the right toes behind us and then bring it back in. Really trying to keep the weight even between the hands. Tap the right toes. Bring it back. Keep the micro bend of the arms. Tap the right toes. Bring it back. Tap the right toes. Bring it back. Great. Let's move to the other leg. Again, reaffirm the hands. Root down through the inner edge. Wrap the elbows towards the back. Micro bend. Lead through the crown of the head. And moving from the strength of the core, you don't have to keep your hand up. I'm just showing you. Moving from the strength of the core without moving the pelvis, we're going to back those left toes up, tap them, and bring them back in. Even weight in the shoulders and the hands. Tap the left toes. Bring it back. Tap the left toes. Bring it back. And even if the left leg doesn't straighten all the way, tap it where it is. Bring it back. Tap it where it is. Bring it back. Tap. Back. Two more. Tap. Back. Tap. Back. Great job. Widen your knees out almost to mat width. Bring your toes together. Push your hands down and away from you and send your sit bones back towards your heels. Now, they may not come all the way to your heels. That's fine. If you have a blanket roll, you can put it underneath your sit bones. We're going to walk our hands forward and bring our chest down into child's pose. And again, the chest does not have to come all the way down to the floor between the thighs. You can stay up on the forearms here if that's more comfortable. Your hips can stay up. We're trying to relax into this posture, so if you want to stack your blocks up underneath your chest or put the blanket underneath your sit bones, that's fine. If you can relax wherever you are without those props, that's fine too. And just allow your forehead to come down either to a block, to the mat, to a blanket, child's pose. Returning to your breathing. If you are doing Ujjayi breath with us, that slight constriction at the back of the throat, slowing the breath, warming the breath, making it slightly audible, almost like a faraway hum. Or breathing through a Darth Vader mask. That's a little less picturesque, but probably a little bit easier to understand. From your child's pose, you're going to slither forward onto your belly. So however feels more comfortable for you to do that, you can walk your knees back, walk your forearms forward, and lower down slowly onto your belly. You're going to take a Sphinx pose. So take your feet out about hip distance apart, tops of the feet onto the ground. Come up onto your forearms and look down. Let's see if we can get our elbows directly underneath our shoulders, which is a pretty deep back bend. So if that's not possible, you can bring them out forward. But we're aiming to get them underneath our shoulders eventually. Now, what we don't want to do is collapse the shoulders forward or turn this into a low back bend. So let's start from the toes up. Press the top of the feet into the mat. Lift the knees. Engage your quads. Press your pubic bone down into the mat with about 30 to 40% pressure. So gently pressing your pubic bone into the mat, and you have a sensitive pelvis, you can use a blanket. That's going to tuck your tailbone and keep this out of the low back. Now, focusing up a little bit higher, see if you can pull your shoulder blades apart. Pull your collarbones open, pull your shoulder blades together onto your back, so that instead of the shoulders collapsing in, pull the shoulders apart, shoulder blades on the back squeeze together, and then down towards your hip points to have a nice long neck, just like we did in our cow pose. Hands press into the mat, legs stay nice and engaged, breathe. Maybe gently push the back of the head back, just gently, don't tip the head back, just push the back of the head back to lift yourself up a little bit higher. Keep pushing down through the pubic bone. And release. Slowly come onto the mat. Take your hands to form a little diamond shape and rest one cheek onto your hands. Feels comfortable, you can wiggle your hips back and forth. Massage your hip bones, reset the sacrum a little bit. We're going to do one more belly down back bend, help us charge up the back body while keeping that core integration. So that's important to remember too, is we want to keep that active belly like we had when we pushed our hands into our thighs. This time let's bring our hands underneath our shoulders. Press the top of the feet into the mat. Hug your elbows in. Lift the knees. Engage squats. Push the pubic bone gently down, so tuck the tailbone just slightly. Take this out of the low back. Push your hands down and away from you. Use your hands to help peel your chest off the ground. Now as you do so, your shoulders have a tendency to dip forward. Again, broadness across the collarbones. Squeeze your shoulder blades together and down your back. Now this might be a lot lower here. We're not trying to get as high as possible. We're focusing on this broadness across the collarbones. So that means you stay nice and low. That's fine. Keep engagement of the legs. Keep pushing down through the pubic bone. Broadness across the collarbones. Hug your elbows in. Push the back of your skull back. Breathe. Only go as high as you can still breathe comfortably. Navel is pulled in and up, protecting the low back even more. If you'd like a little extra challenge, you can float the hands 1 inch off the ground, forcing your back, your upper and mid back to help lift you up, toning those muscles. Keep breathing. And exhale, slowly release. Bring the other cheek down onto the mat. Whenever we do any back bends, we create some heat, we create some energy. It's always nice to let the body settle, just slightly reset before we move on. Plant your hands underneath your shoulders. Take a deep inhale through the crown of the head. And as you exhale, use the strength of your belly pulling towards your spine to push yourself back into child's pose. So knees wide, feet together for just a moment here. Chest comes back down towards the earth between the thighs. Next inhale, round yourself forward. Coming back into tabletop. So reset, hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. Root down through all four corners of the hands. Wing your elbows wide. Wrap your triceps towards the back of the mat. So wrap the elbows, the pointy parts of your elbows towards your knees. Keep a micro bend. Keep pushing down through the inner edges of the hands. Tuck your toes. Engage your legs. Rock to the inner edges of your knees. Now suck your navel in and up. Reach long through the crown of the head. Keep the navel toned. Tilt your sit bones up towards the sky. So almost like we were coming into a cow pose. But keep the navel toned so that we protect the back. Push your hands down and away from you. And slowly pick up your knees, straightening your legs towards downward facing dog, sending the hips up and back. Now, in downward facing dog, it's essentially an upside down V position. Do not worry about straightening the legs all the way or getting the heels down to the ground. First, pedal it out for a second. So bending one or both knees, lubricating the hamstrings. They might be pretty tight, you know. A lot of times in our society, our hamstrings are tight and weak. So we don't use them, and they're not strong, and they're also really tight. So just kind of walking it out. And then pausing, bending the knees deeply. What we want to focus more on here is proper positioning. I'm not worried about getting the chest to the ground or getting the legs straight. Bend in the knees deeply. Almost so much so that you can bring the thighs towards the chest. Think about widening your sit bones out and back. As you do so, hug your navel in and up. Take a minute and look up at your hands. Are you locking out your arms? Push down through the inner edges of your hands. Wing your elbows wide. And then same thing, wrap them towards the back of the mat, keeping the micro bend. From there, allow your head to come between your arms. Send those sit bones out and wide and push your hands down and away from you. You're keeping the space between your shoulder blades. You're keeping your navel hugged in and up. You're not worried. You can keep the legs bent. Weight is even pretty much between the feet and the hands. Root down through the inner edges of the hands. Feet are parallel. They're about hip distance apart. Take one more deep inhale here. Exhale, part the lips, side out the mouth. Settle. Beautiful. Now we're going to start walking our hands back towards our feet. So very carefully shifting the weight, bending the knees as much as we need to do this. Shifting the weight, bring the heels down to the ground. Walking the hands back. Now, as we come into ragdoll, this is a very deep bend in the knees. So we want to bring our low belly to or towards our thighs and think about leading with our sternum towards the mat. If you cannot comfortably bring your hands down, or if you still can't bring your low belly towards your thighs, no worries. You can keep your hands on one or two blocks here. If it feels comfortable and you can get the low belly down to the sides, you can grab opposite elbows, allow your head to hang. Keep the bend in the knees. And just stay. Focusing in on your breath, maybe challenging yourself, closing your eyes. Even here, we can widen our sit bones out and back, drip our sternum or our heart towards our toes. Next, inhale, gently release your elbows. Halfway lift, so spine and gaze long. Lead through the crown of the head. You can keep the nice, generous bend into your knees. As you exhale, bring your hands to your hips, and using the strength of your low belly and your legs, pull yourself up to a stand with a flat back. Beautiful. Another standing balance here. So look down at your feet. They should be hip distance apart and parallel. Root down through all four corners of the feet. Place a gentle bend, almost like so you feel a little bit bouncy. Same thing with the pelvis here. A lot of us tend to stand in more this anterior tilt or this, and if you imagine your pelvis like a bowl, an anterior tilt would be spilling the bowl forwards, and a posterior tilt would be tucking the bowl back. So we want to stand in a neutral position, not forward, not back, right in the middle with slightly bent knees for buoyancy. Now, transferring the weight into our left leg, taking our hands to our hips, we're going to think about plugging the right leg up into the hip socket so that we can hover the right foot 1 inch off the ground. That's all we're doing. We're not hiking the hip up a lot, moving the leg out strangely. We've got a nice generous bend into that left leg. And if your right foot still doesn't come off the ground, you can place your left foot on a block to give yourself a little bit of height here. Just balancing. Bring your hands back to your core. See if you can turn on that low belly. If you can't find that, some audible breath can help. So I know we talked about ujjayi breathing, which is that constriction at the back of the throat, but actually doing audible breathing through the mouth can really help you turn on your low belly. So almost like you were trying to exhale sharply out of the mouth, putting the teeth close together. That will help turn on the low belly. If you can't find that. If you'd like an extra challenge, you can gently close the eyes. That's really going to change things up and help you balance through all four corners of your left foot. You can also bring your right knee out more in front of you, coming up to a 90-degree angle like we were at the beginning. And slowly release. Let's switch it up the other side. Root down through all four corners of that right foot. Tone the belly, nice neutral pelvis. Plug the left leg bone up. Float the left foot. Hands to hips for balance. Again, our right foot can be on a block if we need a little extra height. We're trying to keep the left hip low. We're just lightly lifting the left foot. Again, if you'd like to close your eyes to challenge the balance and or bend your left knee out in front of you to 90 degrees, flexing the foot. We want to make sure that we're using the strength of our right outer hip to hug in towards the midline here. We have a tendency to just kind of like dip into the supporting hip. Let's pull it on back. Gentle bend into the right knee so we're not hyperextending. Core is nice and engaged. Maybe we take some of those exhales. There's a tendency to be embarrassed about the breath when we start yoga, embarrassed about taking a break, embarrassed about shavasana, the moment of stillness. But those are actually the best parts. Nobody tells you that, but they definitely are. Slowly lower the left leg. Inhale, sweeps your arms up overhead, reach tall, pinky finger spiral in. As you exhale, bring your hands to your hips, ground down through the heels. Inhale, reach long through the crown of the head. And exhale with a flat back, hinge at the hips, fold forward, generous bend in the knees. Come back to your forward fold position, bend the knees very generously. Let your giant hair fall down. And then carefully walk your hands back out towards downward facing dog. So you want about 3 to 4 feet between the hands, maybe more if you're taller. I mean, between the feet and the hands, sorry. Not between the hands, that'd be difficult. Bend the knees. Send the sit bones wide. Again, look up at your hands. Push down through the inner edges. Wing your elbows wide. Wrap your triceps towards the back of the mat. Feel the space between your shoulder blades. Allow your head to come between your arms. And gently send the hips up and back. Return to your breath in your downward facing dog. Again, maybe closing your eyes if that feels comfortable. Root down to the inner edges of the hands. Allow gravity to hug your heels towards the mat. And then picking your head up, gaze between your hands. Using the strength of your belly slowly, much slower than you'd like to, lower your knees to the mat at the same time. Untuck your toes. Place your feet flat. Shift the weight forward so the shoulders come over the wrists. Lead long through the crown of the head and out through the sit bones. So this is a modified plank position. And here, make sure you're not hyperextending those elbows. We want that same micro bend and the same wrap. External rotation of the arm bones. Keep that slowly lower to your belly, bending your elbows straight back. Slow as you can, dig your fingertips into the mat. Beautiful. Let's roll over onto our backs. Grab a block. I'm going to move my headset out of the way of you guys. Just finding a gentle heart opener here before we close out. Have your block nearby. Bend your knees just like you had at the beginning, planting your feet close to your sit bones. They don't have to be all the way up towards your sit bones. A few inches from your sit bones is fine. Feet are parallel, maybe even slightly pigeon-toed here since they have a tendency to turn out later. Knees are about hip distance apart. Now before you do anything, let's tuck our tailbone. So pick your hips up, tuck your tailbone. So almost like you were rounding your tailbone up towards the sky and then put it back down. So your low back should feel more spacious on the mat. We want to keep that tuck of the tailbone so that we keep this out of the low back. Grab your block, pushing down firmly through the feet. Bring your elbows to the outer edges of your low ribs. Fingertips face the sky, so like robot arms. Pushing down through the feet and the elbows. Pick your hips up. Tuck the tailbone. So tuck of the pelvis. Lift enough so that you can take the block and slide it on the low or maybe medium setting underneath your sacrum. And your sacrum is that bony part at the bottom of your spine. So it's not in the low back. It's not even really where the pant line is. It's below that. Setting the block on the sacrum with that tuck of the tailbone. Now, if you don't feel enough stretch in the front body, you can lift the hips a little higher and set it on the high setting. Just make sure it's something sturdy and that this doesn't feel uncomfortable in the low back. Wherever you are, you can take your hands to the outer edges of your mat, walk your shoulder blades underneath you to lift the chest just a little bit more, and then try to relax into your block. We're using just enough muscular energy so that the knees don't flap out wide, so we're hugging the knees in towards the midline. And just trying to allow our quads, our belly, our chest to have a little opening. Pressing the back of the head gently into the mat. Returning to our breath. Take one more deep inhale here. And exhale, sigh, part the lips. Release. As you inhale, push your feet down and away from you. Lift up your hips enough to remove the block. And gently, one vertebrae at a time, roll your back onto the mat. Bring your feet a little bit wider than hips distance. Your knees knocked together. Back to our constructive rest. And if it feels comfortable, you can gently rock your knees from side to side, coming back to that windshield wiper position. Next time your knees come through the middle, keep them there. Heel toe your feet back to hip distance apart. Pull your right knee in towards your right armpit, just like we did at the beginning of class. Now, take your right arm inside of your right knee. Take your right hand to the outside edge of your foot. So my arm is inside my knee, my hand is outside my foot. If you can't reach your foot comfortably, loop a strap around the ball of your right foot and hold it with your right hand. Extend the sole of the right foot up towards the ceiling. Again, this works well with the strap. You can take your left hand to your left thigh and just gently push your left hip down and away from you. Flexing the right toes towards the knees. Think about dropping the right knee to the outer edge of the right rib cage. This is half happy baby. Returning to our breath. And carefully release. Plant the right foot, pull the left knee in towards the chest, towards the left armpit. And then take your left arm inside of your left leg. Left hand to the outside of the left foot. Again, you can use a strap. Right hand to the right thigh, push down and away. Lift the sole of the left foot towards the sky. Half happy baby. Drop the left knee towards the outer edge of the left ribs. Keeping the left leg in close to the body here. You might feel this in the left hamstrings, the left hip. Last few moments to tune back into whatever breathing you've been cultivating, whatever conscious attention you've been turning inwards. Carefully release. Extend your legs long, extend your arms up overhead. As you inhale, reach to the fingertips and the toes. And as you exhale, sigh, release it all into the mat. You can widen your feet out to mat width, allow the toes to flop open. Taking your arms down by your side, palms face up. And taking a moment to get settled here in your final Shavasana. So tucking in the tailbone gently to elongate the low back. One shoulder blade underneath at a time. And down, away from the neck. And again, just like at the beginning, it's your choice if you'd like to keep your eyes open with a soft gaze or close them. Any hold that you had on your breath, any ujjayi breathing, Any slow or censored breath can be released, and we can return to our natural breathing patterns. And just try to relax. You've earned this time on your mat. You've earned these moments to settle in, smoothing the skin between your eyebrows, on your forehead, feeling your shoulders melt into the mat. Noticing the rise of your chest or your belly as it naturally moves with your unhindered breath. Make sure you stay here for a good 2 to 3 minutes to reset, calibrate, to download all of the information, the seeds that we've planted today, and just to thank yourself for allowing this opportunity to try new things. When you are ready, do come out of it slowly. Take a moment of gratitude before you move on with your day. Thank you so much for practicing with me. As always, feel free to leave comments of what you would like or any feedback below, and I will be sure to look into it. Have a fabulous day.